Welcome, sleepless spirit. I'm your storyteller tonight, here to guide you gently into the shadows of slumber, where dreams take over and worries fade away. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more bedtime tales, whispered just for you. Let me know in the comments, where in the world are you watching from, and what time is it as you listen tonight? And if there's a story you've been longing to hear, something spooky, something comforting, tell me. I'm always listening. Now, tuck yourself in. Let the darkness wrap around you like a warm blanket. It's time to let go and drift into the story. I'll omit the name because I want to keep my identity private, but you should be aware that I have a social media account. I'm just an ordinary person with a job that I've had 4 years, and I used to occasionally post pictures online, but recently I started creating these short videos, which they call Reels, which are quite popular these days. I started making these videos for fun, but soon some of them started to receive a lot of likes. My following grew faster than I ever thought, so I persisted until I had over 10,000 followers. I truly loved creating these videos, and I shared them daily from my home, workplace, and other locations. It had been around 3 months since the bizarre events of this story began when I checked my social media and noticed a new message waiting for me. I occasionally got messages from friends sharing stuff or from viewers, but this time it was from a company I had never heard of before. They had a verified account and a sizable following, and they said they loved my videos and wanted to sponsor one. I was overjoyed because I had never even considered making money from my videos. I had no idea how much they would pay, but I was excited. After exchanging emails and signing a contract with my details, they said the products would arrive in about a week. For the next few days, I followed my usual routine because my work schedule was fairly regular and they seemed genuine and cool. I replied, expressing my interest, and they promised to email me more details. They also planned to send me some products to feature in a video. Began early and returned home by the afternoon of that week's Thursday, when I started late at 11 a.m., which allowed me to enjoy a rare luxury of sleep as I typically had. To wake up before 7:30 a.m., my alarm was set for 9 o'clock, but I was startled awake at 8:30 by the sound of glass shattering, which startled and alarmed me. I sat up. My heart was racing as I reached for my phone to call 911, because I could hear them moving around, not bothering to be quiet. And I knew there had to be at least 2 intruders, because I was listening intently and then heard more noises that sounded like someone forcing their way into my house. The sounds came from the front of the house, near the dining area, because my place isn't very large, so noises traveled easily. As I lay there with my phone in hand, waiting for the police to arrive, the intruders continued to search my house, unaware or unconcerned with the noise they were making. The gravity of the situation started to set in, but fortunately for me, it didn't appear that they were approaching where I was hiding. After I hung up with 911, the operator informed me that the police would arrive soon. In the meantime, I could still hear the intruders moving around the house, and I was nervous because I thought they might approach my bedroom. To date, they had stayed in other parts of the house, but I wasn't sure how long that would last. Since my bedroom door wasn't locked, I chose to move to the bathroom next door, which was secured. Created a slightly safer waiting area, but this required me to open my bedroom door and shut the bathroom door behind me without creating any noise. I approached my bedroom door carefully, opened it slowly, and tiptoed toward the bathroom as quietly as possible. Suddenly, I heard footsteps approaching, so I rushed into the bathroom, closed the door a little louder than it ended, and locked it for good. As I stood safely inside, the footsteps seemed to go away, and then I heard men's voices coming from the other end of the house. After a few more moments, the house became quiet as though they had left, so I waited in the bathroom, with the door locked, and about 5 minutes later, the police showed up. I heard them knocking, so I carefully went outside to open the front door, and they entered and began searching my house. By that time, the intruders had already begun their search. Were gone. They had broken the back window that looked out onto the yard from the dining room, and a number of my possessions were gone. I was thankful that I was unharmed, but I was also angry about the situation and hoped that the police would apprehend those responsible. What was all of this related to Instagram? At first, I didn't think so, but after a few days, nothing came in the mail. So I went on. I used Instagram to message the company about the anticipated products, but their account seemed to have been erased. After more searching, I discovered another verified page for the company, and then it dawned on me that I had provided my address in the sponsorship contract. If they had seen my posts, they might have been aware of my work schedule and even recognized certain areas of my home. I didn't know why or if it was just a strange coincidence, but I couldn't get rid of the feeling that it was all planned out when I found out that anyone could pay to have a page verified. This happened to me during my second year of university, when I was living in a small house with my roommate Jack. When this all began, I was browsing Instagram one day and saw that I had a new follower named Emily. Her profile featured my university's initials and the year she would graduate, and I also noticed that a few people I knew from school, not close friends, but acquaintances, I assumed were following her. The university I attended was large, with about 20,000 students. It was the first semester. I assumed Emily was a student at my university, so I followed her back. Her profile consisted of a few selfies and pictures of her cat, nothing out of the ordinary. A few days later, I discovered that Emily had liked every single one of my roughly 40 posts from high school. It was flattering, but it was also a little odd, so I wondered if she might be interested in me. She didn't send me any messages or leave any comments. Any messages. Days went by with no more communication, and then one evening, when Jack was studying in a university classroom, I was home alone at around 9 o'clock. I was in my room and didn't hear the first knock clearly, so I stepped into the hallway and heard it again, this time realizing it was coming from the back door rather than the front. I was surprised to see a girl standing outside Emily when I walked up to the back door and peered through the window. I had only seen her in her online selfies, so I wasn't sure we had ever met in person. As I watched her attempt to open the door herself, I hesitated, then opened it a little and said hello. I asked her why she was here and she asked if she could come inside. Something didn't feel right, and it was unsettling that she showed up at my back door without warning late at night, especially since she had no way of knowing where I lived. I asked her how she found my house, and she simply asked to come inside again. I didn't want her to enter, so I explained that I was really busy with schoolwork and needed to return to it. She paused, looking upset, then said she would leave, and then she walked away, looking angry. I was relieved when she left, but mostly I was confused. After she left, I went back to my room and blocked Emily on Instagram because she had shown up without telling me, which felt strange. When Jack came back, I asked him if he knew Emily, and he said he didn't. I showed him her picture, but he still didn't recognize her. He was equally perplexed as I was after I told him what had happened. I'd hoped he knew her, or that perhaps she had asked him for my address, but he didn't, which made the situation even stranger and more frightening. The following night, I worked late on assignments that were due at midnight. It was approximately 11:30 p.m. I had almost finished when Jack called out from the living room, where he was watching TV. When I asked him what he needed, he said that a girl was at the front door. I assumed it was Emily, so I went to the living room and peered through the window, where she was standing. However, she didn't knock. Instead, she appeared to notice that I was watching, and then abruptly left. It was the most unnerving thing ever. I went back, finished my homework, and then sat with Jack in the living room. We kept checking the windows, half expecting her to come back, but fortunately, she didn't. Months later, I asked Jack to check her Instagram by My Name is Anna, And this strange event started in the fall of 2023, when I was living alone in a small house in a quiet suburb and working at a nearby office. At that time, Emily had posted more pictures and still appeared to be attending our university. I never understood her actions, which were extremely unsettling. I also maintained a personal Instagram profile with a few thousand followers. I was just an ordinary person who liked sharing details of my life online. And one evening, I was getting ready for bed. A close friend sent me a message with a link to an Instagram profile and the words, "This isn't you right curious," was posing as mine, but it used a completely different name instead of my real one. Surprisingly, the account had a lot of photos that were definitely mine, even though I had never shared them from this account. Over the course of several months, the profile had uploaded about 120 of my photos, the majority of which were the same ones I had previously uploaded on my own. As I looked through the photos, I felt uneasy because nobody seemed to realize that this account was a complete imposter. Among the familiar photos were a few, but I had never posted online. These were private images saved on my phone. The fake account on Instagram had amassed about 600 followers, and each photo had received many likes. Images from intimate moments in my life. It was terrifying to discover that someone had accessed these private photos without my consent. How had they gotten them? What else did they know about me? I immediately messaged the enigmatic Instagram account, asking who they were and why they were impersonating me. I then reported the account, but not long after I sent the message, the profile blocked me. I told a few friends about it, and they agreed to help by reporting the profile as well. A few days later, the Instagram team closed the account. I was relieved that it was gone, but I was still confused by the identity of the person who had done it. However, a few days later, something even more disturbing occurred when I left my house one morning and discovered a note taped to my front door. It was written on plain. I hurried to the police station, explained everything, showed them the note, and told them about the fake Instagram page's creator, who boasted about having access to any information they wanted about me. The paper was neatly folded, and as I read it, a cold fear descended upon me. They made fun of me, saying, "I must think I'm very special because of my social media presence shaken." I felt vulnerable after my Instagram account was hacked, so I took quick action to secure my digital life. I made new accounts where needed and changed all of my passwords to something much stronger. Fortunately, my living arrangement was about to change, which gave me a small sense of relief because my lease was about to expire. The police took note of the incident and began an investigation. I moved a few weeks later, and nothing strange has happened since, but I still worry about being watched or followed. I occasionally wonder if the stalker picked me as their target, because they were unsure of who it was or what might have happened next, or if it was an old classmate who might be harboring resentment. Like many others, I'm a young woman who likes to share moments of my life on Instagram. I frequently upload pictures and enjoy seeing the likes and comments they receive. Most of the time, though, these reactions come from close friends, but occasionally I have to deal with strange and unsettling messages from strangers. Some men like my photos at random, leave comments, or send me direct messages, but some are just too weird, so I end up deleting them. Usually, I just brush it off as a normal part of being online, but last summer, I uploaded a new photo to Instagram, and a stranger liked it and commented. He wrote something nice and included a fire emoji. At first, his message appeared innocuous, but a short while later, he sent me a direct message that said, "Hello, I'm not interested," and didn't inquisitive. I looked at his profile and saw that he was much older and had only a few pictures, none of which I recognized. Since we didn't have any friends in common, I chose to ignore him in the hopes that he would get the message, but he didn't stop the next day. Over the next few days, he sent me several more messages, which I ignored, thinking he would eventually give up, but his perseverance didn't waver every day. I decided to block him after seeing new messages from him by notifications one evening. However, before blocking him, I wanted to see what he had been sending. As I scrolled through the messages, my heart stopped among the repeated greetings, and I saw a picture of my house that he had sent. I was terrified when I realized this was not your typical follower. This man must be local, and he must have known where I lived because, as I read his other messages, they became increasingly unsettling. He first said hello, then explicitly stated that he knew my address. After blocking the man and reporting him to Instagram, I was left wondering if this would be enough to stop him, but I chose not to call the police because I had my doubts. Living alone in a 2-story house on the outskirts of a busy city brought both freedom and fear. I spent the evening trying to divert my attention by calling friends, but none were available to come over as the house grew. I feared that they might not take my worries seriously. Darker, I felt more alone, and every little noise made me tense. For a few hours, nothing out of the ordinary happened, so I started to unwind in the hopes that the man would have moved on by 10 p.m. My phone was quiet, and there were no strange notifications, which helped to reduce my anxiety a little. However, during a quiet part of the movie, I felt the urge to look outside. I paused the film, my heart pounding, and crept to the window to peek through the blinds. I saw a car parked directly in front of my house, and I didn't recognize the silhouette. I was frozen in place as I listened carefully to the sound of a car door opening and then closing, breaking the night's silence. With my heart in my throat, I dared to ask myself, is that someone in the driver's seat? My mind raced. Was it him? Had he managed to follow me despite my efforts? I quickly let the blind snap back into place to take another quick look. I saw a figure getting out of the car and making his way to my house. As the figure got closer, I recognized the gait and the build. It was unquestionably the man from Instagram. He approached steadily, and I could hear his footsteps as he got closer to my front door. That night, I was so terrified that I hoped he wouldn't try to break into my house. In the back of the house, I could hear his footsteps. My hands were shaking when I decided it was time to call the police, so I grabbed my phone and dialed. I explained the situation in quick, urgent whispers while still sitting on the couch, afraid to move, and for a few long minutes, there was silence. I couldn't hear where the man was, and the suspense made my heart race. Suddenly, the sound of a car door opening and closing broke the silence. I was hoping to see police cars outside the window, but instead I saw the man. Even though I was glad he was gone, I knew that the police would now have a harder time apprehending him. The police arrived approximately 5 minutes later, and I did my best to describe the man in his car. Even though I couldn't see him clearly, I told the officers everything, including the messages and the picture of my house. But when I checked, I discovered that I had blocked his Instagram account, which appeared to have been deleted because it was no longer in use. After taking my statement, the officers left my block list, but I was still nervous, so I went to a friend's house for the next few days because it felt safer knowing the man knew where I lived. However, the very next night, I got a direct message request on Instagram from a new anonymous account that simply read user, followed by a series of numbers and lacked a profile picture. The message only included one picture, a terrifying snapshot of my bedroom window taken from outside in the yard, and my blood froze when I realized that he must have taken it while skulking around my house. I showed my friend the picture, and we reported it to the police right away, but there wasn't much distinguishable information on the account. The police promised to look into it more. After a few calm days, I decided it was time to head back home in a bright morning light. I felt a little braver, but as I drove up to my house, my heart fell. The back door window was broken, and I was afraid he might still be inside. I called the police immediately instead of getting out of my car. The police responded quickly, cautiously entered my house, and after what seemed like an eternity, they came out with the man in custody. He had been hiding there, possibly waiting for me to come back, but as they led him away, I felt a wave of relief that the ordeal was finally over, but I knew that the terror of those days would follow me forever. This incident would stick with me as a clear reminder of the vulnerability that comes with sharing one's life online. I frequently spend time browsing the internet for amusing images and news. I'm a 22-year-old man, and last year, while I was unwinding in my dorm room and watching YouTube videos on my phone, I received a notification on Instagram about a follow request from a girl named Emma. Her profile was private, and her profile picture showed her cheering enthusiastically at a sporting event. Based on that one picture, she seemed like a fun-loving person. Her bio stated that she went to a large university nearby, and she had a respectable 1,000 followers, 400 followers, and 100 posts. Although I didn't know her, she seemed intriguing, so I accepted her request and asked her to follow me back. I then resumed watching my video. The following day, I checked Instagram to see if Emma had accepted my follow request. Surprisingly, she had declined, but she still followed me. I thought this was odd and a little disappointing, but I didn't give it much thought. Even stranger, Emma liked one of my old photos the next day that I had posted 4 years prior. It was obvious that she had looked through my profile, wondering if I had made a mistake. I asked to follow her again, but an hour later she declined again. I was perplexed, but I chose to put the matter aside and move on. Shortly after Erie, things started to I lived with my roommate Tom, who were a small 2-bedroom house off campus. One morning, Tom said he thought he saw someone darting through our backyard the night before. Over the next few days, we continued to hear strange noises outside, sometimes coming from inside our house. One terrifying night, I was startled awake by a loud rattling noise at my window. I jumped out of bed and immediately turned on the light. As soon as I did, when I heard a rattling sound, my heart stopped racing. I hurried to my window and looked out into the darkness. I saw a man running away, and he briefly looked back at me. It was too dark to see him clearly, but he was unquestionably an adult man. I woke Tom, and we spent the rest of the night debating what to do. We decided not to call the police because we thought it might be a one-time incident scare. The next day, with the terror of the previous night still fresh in my mind, I found myself aimlessly browsing Instagram once more. Curious, I went to check Emma's profile again, but this time it was gone. I began to suspect that the person who followed me wasn't Emma at all, but rather a man posing as her. I couldn't tell why he had rejected my follow requests, but the timing of everything made it seem like too much of a coincidence. I tried to ignore the discomfort by concentrating on other things, but that night, as I tried to fall asleep, Tom heard the sound of gravel crunching outside, and we exchanged glances. In the dim light, both of us terrified, on our faces, we decided it was time to take action. The following morning, we discussed installing a camera outside to see if we could apprehend whoever was skulking around our house. We spent the day testing the camera and making sure it covered the backyard and the area surrounding my window, feeling a little more secure. Get some sleep, but it was difficult to shake the feeling that we were being watched. We kept the lights on and our phones handy in case the camera helped us feel safer. But instead it made us more anxious, because every little sound made us jump, wondering if it was the wind or if someone was actually waiting for us and watching. We had no idea what was coming next, but we knew we needed to be prepared. I frequently spend time on Instagram, which is one of my favorite apps on my phone. I don't post much myself. Instead, I mostly enjoy watching videos and viewing other people's photos. But a strange thing happened a few months ago, and I'm still baffled by it. At first, my profile was public and had about 200 followers, and followed roughly 300 people, which isn't a lot by most standards. My own profile only had 3 posts, all of which were pretty old and uninteresting. I hardly ever left comments on other people's posts, unless they were from close friends. so it was a complete surprise when I opened Instagram one morning to see 50 new notifications. I was perplexed to see that my old photos were suddenly inundated with comments, but these weren't. I checked some of the profiles leaving these comments, and they looked normal, all private, and none of them were familiar to me. As I browsed, more notifications appeared, this time direct messages each. Despite the spike in comments, there were harsh and hurtful people who called me ugly, a horrible person, and other terrible things. One of them was as cruel as the comments. I replied too, asking why they were sending these messages. The chilling response was, "You should know that I searched my brain for any reason why this was happening. I hadn't changed anything recently, and I was always kind to everyone." The negativity was overwhelming, and the hateful messages kept coming at me through direct messages and comments until I was finally overwhelmed and decided to delete my account, so I carefully created a new one a week later. Since then, everything has returned to normal, but I'm still plagued by the question of who those people were and why they were so upset with me. I had done nothing wrong, as far as I knew, and the thought hung over my daily scrolls through the app like a gloomy cloud. I'm just a regular guy who enjoys using the social media app Instagram. I check it daily to see what my friends are up to and to stay up to date on my favorite sports. I frequently browse the Explore page, where Instagram displays random posts from accounts you don't follow based on what you might like. A week or so ago, on a typical evening, I noticed that the Explore page was different each time you opened Instagram. The same picture appeared twice on the Explore page. At first, I thought it might have been a minor glitch, but then I noticed that it kept coming up no matter how many times I reloaded the page. At first, I didn't give it much thought, just a strange repetition, but the repetition began to feel uncanny. The picture was of a grey four-door sedan parked in an unremarkable spot. It looked completely normal and neither new nor old. I was curious, so I clicked on the profile, even though it didn't display the number of likes or comments. The profile name was a random combination of letters and numbers, and the profile picture was the same grey car. It had only a few followers, and there were only 4 pictures posted, each of which showed a different car on a different location parked by the side of the road, one in a driveway. As I scrolled through these ordinary car pictures, my heart skipped a beat when I realized that the background in one of them was my house. The car in the driveway wasn't just the same make and model as mine. It was my car. I zoomed in with trembling fingers, but none of the cars stood out. They appeared to belong to anyone. I shared the photo with a few friends in the hopes that someone would tell me it was a joke, but nobody knew anything about it. I thought that was definitely my driveway, and that was definitely my car. I felt a chilling rush of fear. Who was using this account? And why were they taking pictures of my car and posting them on this obscure Instagram profile? Of captions, or any indication of the photographer's intentions. The mystery grew, and the unnerving sensation intensified as I wondered if someone was following me and observing my movements. My friends thought it was extremely odd, but none of them could figure out who might do it or why. Out of curiosity, I thought about leaving a comment or messaging the enigmatic profile, but ultimately I decided not to. And when I returned to Instagram the following day, the same image of my car was there on the Explore page. I tapped on it, and it was the same image as before. I then saw that the account had shared a story, so I clicked on it. The story included a poll with the question which one, and options labeled 1, 2, 3, and 4. I didn't vote because it didn't make sense to me. The entire situation felt too strange, so I decided to just ignore it. I logged off Instagram and spent the rest of the day at home, feeling uneasy, but trying to divert my attention. That evening, I went to bed feeling depressed, but the following morning, I got ready for work as usual, but when I stepped outside, my heart fell. All those strange posts came flooding back to me, and I called the police right away before telling my boss. After dealing with the police, She was understanding and allowed me to start work later. I told them everything, including the strange Instagram account, but when I tried to show them, I found that it had been deleted. The police took all the information they could and promised to look for my car, so I used a ride-sharing service to get to work and then made arrangements for a rental car through my insurance the following day. After a few days of constant anxiety and confusion, the police finally called to say they had located my car abandoned on the side of the road about 20 miles away. Fortunately, it was undamaged, and I was able to retrieve it. However, the police were never able to identify the person behind the Instagram account or the reason they targeted me. Was it a way for someone to decide which car to steal? And why would someone post such things on Instagram in the first place? This is a terrifying story that happened to me not too long ago. To start, let me say that I am a woman, and this happened in a large city park that I was walking through after leaving my job. I just hope that nothing like this ever happens again, because the fear and uncertainty of those days still linger whenever I use social media or hear a car like mine pass by. Because it's in the middle of a busy city, it's usually crowded. But that day as I was walking, I started to feel uneasy when I saw a man following me. I first noticed him when I stopped to check my phone, and he was lingering nearby as if doing nothing. When I started walking again, he did the same, and I hurried across the park to the busy city streets while waiting to cross a road. I saw him close by once more, stealing glances at me whenever I looked in his direction. I wasn't sure if he was actually following me, but I couldn't get rid of the suspicion. It took me another 10 minutes or so to get to my apartment building, and every time I walked, he was still there, not too far behind. I had never experienced anything like this before, so when I finally arrived, it was really scary. I hurried inside my apartment building, locked the door behind me, and he was about 20 feet away. I couldn't tell if he tried to enter or just walked past, so I tried to erase his face in the hopes that I wouldn't see him again. Later that night, my phone buzzed with a notification about a new Instagram follower, and when I opened the app, I was devastated to see that it was him, the same man from the following night. As I was getting settled in my apartment, another notification appeared from Instagram, and this time, unbelievably, it was him following my second account. On my second Instagram, I shared things that weren't that important with anyone other than my closest friends. I blocked him right away because I couldn't understand how he had found my name or my profile was blocked so that only individuals I had authorized could see what I posted. It didn't even contain my real name, and I hadn't linked it to my main account. I was so terrified when I discovered that he had discovered this private profile as well and was requesting to follow me, that I blocked him there as well. A half hour later, I heard a loud knock at my door, which sent shivers down my spine. The same man was standing right outside the door when I tiptoed to it and peed through the peephole. He had somehow figured out not only where I lived, but also which apartment was mine. I was so terrified that I didn't open the door when he knocked again, more forcefully this time, but I remained silent and watched him stay there instead of leaving, simply waited for me to let him in, sometimes taking a few steps away and then returning as if he was waiting. I picked up my phone and called the police, never taking my eyes off him. He kept lingering there, pacing a little but always coming back to my door. It seemed like forever, but the police finally arrived after 10 minutes or so, and when they did, I heard them speaking to him through my door, and he told them he had gone to the wrong place. He pretended to be perplexed and claimed to be merely searching for his friend Jason, but it was obvious to everyone that he wasn't telling the truth. The police didn't seem to believe him, and after speaking with him, they only told him to leave and not to return. I told them everything, including the park and the Instagram followings, and they told me to call them if he ever appeared again. Fortunately, that was the case. I am a woman living alone in an apartment complex, and I have a Facebook page, the Last time I saw him, he never came back, and the entire experience left me shaken. I couldn't get over how unsettling it was that we could learn so much about me and then just show up at my door. It was a terrifying reminder of how cautious you need to be about who might be watching. Profile where I frequently post new pictures every few weeks. Sharing pictures on Facebook is fun for me. Even though occasionally you run into phony accounts or unnerving people, until then, I hadn't really encountered any major problems. But one morning I checked Facebook and saw a new message from a man who followed my account. Mike, whom I did his message, was an invitation to meet and spend time together, but I didn't recognize him and he hadn't followed me back, so I wasn't sure how long he had been viewing my page. I thought it was strange that he expected me to accept his invitation so quickly, and based on his profile picture, he didn't seem like he sent me another message the very next day, repeating his request to meet up and even offering to pick me up this time. I politely declined, hoping he would understand that I wasn't interested, but Mike persisted and tried to convince me once more, but I ignored him. I couldn't understand why he kept sending these messages without any previous communication, so it appeared he stopped after that. I didn't get any more messages the following day, so I assumed he had given up for the night after I went to the grocery store in the evening after work. I occasionally shop, but I don't follow a set routine, so I spent about 30 minutes choosing groceries as it was getting close to 8:30 p.m. By the time I was prepared to go, the store had subsided, and there were just a few customers there. When I got to my car in the dark parking lot, I saw a car parked oddly near to mine. I'd just finished putting my bags in the car. The door of the car next to mine opened, and a man got out. At first glance, he appeared to be just another customer, but instead of going to the store, he came straight at me. At first, I was perplexed, but then he called out my name and asked why I had been ignoring, and I ignored his messages until I realized it was the same Facebook microphone that I recognized from his profile picture, which momentarily silenced me. I tried to get past him to get to my driver's door, but he grabbed my arm and insisted that I go with him. I begged him to let go, telling him that he was hurting me, but he only tightened his grip and began dragging me towards his house. Moments before I was able to ask him why he was here and how he knew I would be at the store, he said it was just a coincidence. I hurried to put away the last of my groceries, telling him I had to get home. When I realized he was much stronger than me, I took advantage of the opportunity to run around my car, yank open the driver's door, and jump inside, locking just as Mike released me. Fortunately, a few other shoppers in the parking lot noticed the commotion and heard me yelling for help at the top of my lungs, hoping to attract their attention. Mike attempted to follow me, but I started the car quickly and left the parking lot before he could get back in his car. I drove to another nearby store out of his line of sight, and then zigzagged through a residential area's streets to make sure he wasn't following me. I didn't go home until I felt safe, and it took me some time to collect myself enough to remember to call the police. All that had transpired, but by the time I checked Facebook once more, Mike's account was gone. I believe he deleted it after that terrifying night, but the fear of that encounter persisted for a long time. I'm a college student who enjoys sharing details of my life on Instagram, and occasionally a while back, I shared a new photo that received a lot of attention from my friends. However, among the comments was one from a man I didn't know, whose name was Mark, and whose username was just Mark followed by a random string of numbers. His profile picture was blurry, but he appeared to be much older than me. Normally, I just ignore messages from people who make me uncomfortable. I usually don't mind, since I occasionally receive strange comments, but a few days later, he commented on 2 more of my photos. In one comment, he called me beautiful, and in another, he said he wanted to meet me. I decided that the best course of action would be to ignore him in the hopes that he would leave if I didn't reply, but that didn't work, and he sent me a direct message shortly after. When I opened it, he wrote that he thought I was attractive and asked if we could meet. I didn't reply, hoping he would stop messaging me, but he didn't get the message. The following day, he sent me 5 messages in 10 minutes, and since I still hadn't replied, I decided it was time to block him because my Instagram profile was public. He quickly noticed and made another account within hours, unfollowed me once more. His messages had changed. They were no longer friendly, and he was upset that I had blocked him. He threatened to find me, so I blocked him again, reasoning that he was probably just trying to scare me. However, the next day, he contacted me again from a different account, this time with a chilling message, stating that he was now in the same state as me, and even mentioning the city where I live. I couldn't figure out where he might have seen me because I was working at a busy restaurant and attending a large college near a major city. There were too many places for our paths to cross, so I decided to report his Instagram profile and tell them everything he had done. I was terrified because it seemed like this man hadn't just found me by chance on Instagram. He must have known me in real life. I wasn't sure if it would help, but I wasn't sure if this was serious enough to summon the police either. For a day or two, I didn't hear from him, which gave me some relief, but as I was beginning to unwind, he got in touch with me once more. This time, he had made a new account, and his message was terrifying. He claimed to be on his way to my house. At first, I didn't think he would actually. I lived alone in a tiny 1-bedroom apartment next to the parking lot, so it was easy to see when a car pulled up outside my apartment. An older man, who looked exactly like the man in my profile picture, got out of the car and began to walk toward my building. I was terrified that he was coming to my apartment, so I hurried to my bedroom and pulled down my shades. I hid in my closet and called the police. As I was speaking with them, I heard someone knocking on my front door, and my phone kept displaying more messages from him on Instagram. I remained trembling in the closet and waited for the police to arrive. They arrived just in time. Discovered the man attempting to break through my front window, arrested him, and I was safe, but the entire ordeal left me feeling profoundly distraught. I knew I wouldn't have to worry about him anymore, but the fear had been there since I was a young child. I wanted to be a model, and everyone said I was attractive and the perfect shape for it. I was thin and had long legs, and I thought I'd look fantastic in pictures. So I started posting my photos on Instagram in the hopes that someone would notice me. I gained a few thousand followers, but I wasn't very serious about sharing mostly simple selfies, but I thought it might lead to something. Then, I got a message from a talent agency saying they had seen my photos and wanted to meet me. I was excited, so I looked them up, and they seemed genuine. They had a website and all. They also asked me to come over for a chat, which I thought their office would be like. Be in a grand building, but when I arrived, it was just a block of apartments. I stood outside, unsure if I had made a mistake. I texted the agent to let them know I had arrived, and they texted me back immediately, telling me to come in. I hesitated, considering my dreams, but I chose to ignore my doubts and entered the building, which made me nervous. The entrance was clean and well lit. I located the elevator and pressed the button for their floor, but it was too quiet, and there was no sign of life. I got out of the elevator and looked around. It was just a typical hallway, not an office space. I walked slowly to number 56 because they told me the door was ordinary and nothing special. I knocked nervously, and someone inside informed me. When I opened the door, I saw a large man in a suit grinning warmly and saying, "We spoke on Instagram. Please come in and have a seat." I entered, but as soon as I did, I saw it was only a flat, not an office, just someone's house. I became uncomfortable and made the decision to leave. I thanked the man and told him I had to leave, but he seemed surprised as I approached the door. He moved to block it, asking, "What's wrong?" His eyes turned cold, and I looked scared. I tried to leave, but he grabbed my arm tightly, saying, "Just sit, it's okay." His voice was deep and frightening, and I couldn't get away from him because he was too strong and was searching for something, so I defended myself by finding nothing within reach. And then I heard a man walking down the hallway, possibly a neighbor. I screamed as loudly as I could, and the man released my arm. I ran out of the room and slammed the door, and I continued running until I reached the elevator, passing an elderly man who was most likely the neighbor I heard. I repeatedly pressed the elevator button in the hopes that it would arrive quickly, and when it did, I leapt. I entered and hit the ground floor button, and as the elevator descended, I began to cry. I couldn't believe what had happened. I had been so excited, and it had turned into a nightmare. I ran out into the lobby and didn't stop until I was surrounded by many people, where I felt safe. I sat on a bench to catch my breath, realizing how stupid I had been. I called the police because I was in real danger and was fortunate to get away. Later, I discovered that the Instagram page was a fake and that the talent agency was real, but that man had nothing to do with them. He was arrested, and I discovered that he had been investigated for abusing other women. I never found out what happened to them, but I hope they got. I had a lot of friends and enjoyed hanging out, studying, and keeping up with the latest trends on Instagram when I was in college a few years ago. One day, a guy from my previous school days started following me on Instagram, but I didn't really remember him. We took some classes together, but we never spoke much. His name was Tom, and he always seemed a little strange to me. He was around my age. I believe I was 21, tall, thin, and always wore black. His Instagram was strange. All of his pictures were taken in dim lighting, which made him appear depressed and a little eerie. It seemed like he was trying to pass for a member of those goth groups, but I wasn't sure what to think. Want to be cruel, so I accepted his follow request. Shortly after, he started messaging me to say that I was attractive and that he had liked me for a long time. This surprised me because we had seen each other at school, but he never spoke. I assumed that he was simply shy, which I could understand, but his messages made me uncomfortable, so I didn't respond in the hopes that he would. Even though we were in the same major, I never ran into Tom at school, which I found strange, but was secretly relieved about. One evening, while I was looking at him, he continued to send me messages asking why I was ignoring him. So I did the only thing I could think of. I blocked him. Instagram. When I heard noises outside, I first assumed it was one of my roommates returning, but then I heard footsteps outside my room, which made me freeze. I knew I should call the police, but I had to keep quiet, so the stranger wouldn't know I knew they were there. So I stealthily picked up my phone and slipped out. Time seemed to stop. I slipped into my closet and closed the door softly behind me. My heart was pounding loudly in my ears, and I was trying very hard to breathe quietly. When I heard footsteps outside, I picked up my phone and called the police, whispering into it about my predicament and being told to keep quiet. I was afraid and didn't care what they wanted, but after a while I heard the police sirens approaching and growing louder, then the sound of footsteps rushing away. So I remained hidden until I heard someone moving around my house and my bedroom door opened, leaving only the thin door of my closet between me and them. I was in shock because it didn't seem like it was that loud, but I was too scared to think clearly. The police were at my front door when I walked out, and I was so grateful that they might have saved me. However, when I later came out, my room was a mess with clothes all over the place and my bed upside down. It looked like a storm had hit my room. I always knew he was strange, but this was beyond my comprehension. The police advised me to be cautious and call them if anything else happened, so I decided to spend a few days with my family because I couldn't bear to be in my apartment any longer. When I got back to university, I found out that Tom had been expelled for stalking someone else. I'm a 21-year-old college student who has been using Instagram since high school. A few months ago, I opened the Instagram app and saw a new follower request from a girl named Jane, with whom I had shared a picture. Fortunately, he was caught this time when he targeted me, because he hadn't been caught for anything serious. Before, we weren't close friends, but we had spoken a few times and she seemed friendly. I looked at her profile, which only had a few pictures, and she asked how my studies were going. Later that day, Jane sent me a message to greet me and inquire about how I was doing. We exchanged a few messages about jobs and school before a few nights later, around midnight, I thought I heard a noise from outside as I was about to go to sleep. I lived in a small house near my college with 2 other girls, and I had my own room. She mentioned that she had a school project to make a video and asked if she could borrow my camera. I was fine with it and gave her my home address. However, the following day, Jane messaged me again to say she no longer needed my camera, but thanked me anyhow. I heard someone moving the bushes outside my window, so I went to investigate and saw a figure running away. The person was wearing jeans and a red shirt, but I couldn't make out who it was. I immediately closed my window and told my roommates about it. We were all terrified, and it took me more than an hour to get calm enough to try to sleep again. A week later, I ran into Jane on my way to class. I greeted her and inquired about her video project. Looked perplexed and inquired about the project, but when I tried to remind her to borrow my camera, she insisted she didn't understand. I took out my phone to show her our chat, but all of her messages were gone, and her account had disappeared. Jane showed me her actual Instagram page on her phone, which was entirely different from the one I had seen, and she wasn't following me at all. The next night, while I was up late doing homework, I heard the bushes move again. Before I could react, there was a knock on my window. I was frozen with fear, thinking it might be the same man from before this. All we knew was that someone must have created a fake account pretending to be her, and since the account was deleted, there was nothing we could do. My heart raced when I noticed that the window was slightly open and that a hand had crept in, slowly raising it higher. In a panic, I grabbed my phone, ran to the bathroom, and locked myself in. I called the police, trembling with fear as I waited for assistance, and I quickly explained the situation to them, telling them that someone was breaking into my house. Promised to send help right away and instructed me to stay on the line, while sitting in the bathroom's darkest corner. I was breathing shallowly and trying not to make any noise, but the intruder had entered my room and I could hear every step he took. His departure from my room and his subsequent inspection of the other rooms where my roommates would be normally. When his footsteps got close to the bathroom door, my heart was thumping so loudly that I thought he might hear it. He tried the door handle and discovered it was locked, and after a moment, he spoke in a remarkably composed voice. I just wanted to talk, and his young man's voice didn't make me feel anything. Safer, I remained silent, pressed into the corner, and he went on, "I'm not going to hurt you," followed by a laugh that made my spine tingle. Then, faintly, I heard sirens in the distance, and my heart clung to the hope that they were coming for me. As they approached, the man, who was still composed, said, "Now why did you have to do a?" I didn't leave the bathroom until I heard the front door open and the distinct sound of voices outside. At that point, I heard police voices filling the house, and I carefully left the bathroom. The officers greeted me and assured me that they had apprehended the man, and that I was safe now, that he was a student at my university. This story happened a few months ago, and I am a 19-year-old man. He created a fake account to watch me and find out where I lived. His plan was almost successful, but fortunately I was safe. The relief was overwhelming, but the fear of what could have happened still haunted me. When I checked Instagram in October, I noticed a new follower. Curious, I looked up who it was and saw that it was a pretty girl my age. I looked through her profile and saw that her posts typically received 200 to 300 likes, so I decided to follow her back. The following day, she messaged me first, simply saying, "Hey, how are you?" I replied, "Hey, how are you?" When I asked her if she had Snapchat, she told me that she only used Instagram. After a week of chatting, we decided to meet the following Thursday night, and she mentioned that she worked in the city centre. She also suggested that I meet her on a certain street at 10 p.m. Drove to the location early after work, feeling a little nervous but excited. I texted her when I got there, and she replied that she was in her black car parked nearby. I saw the car, and as I got closer, I noticed that its windows were darkly tinted. I hesitated, but I started to walk in its direction, and then the car started to move. I panicked, turned, and I tried to drive home after running back to my car and driving away as quickly as I could, but I noticed a car seemed to be following me. I panicked and started making random turns in an attempt to get away from them. This continued for about 30 minutes until the car finally stopped pursuing me. I chose to take a long detour home, and when I got there, I checked Instagram and, to my surprise, the girl's accounts and our messages were still there. I reported most of you are aware of the Instagram app and how it works, so let me start by saying that I think I'm a pretty good-looking girl, even though I'm not one of those who get hundreds of likes on their photos. The police found that the girl was real and innocent, but her account had been hacked. I'm just glad I'm safe, followers, but it was never a daily occurrence. However, last year, I checked Instagram and discovered that I had 36 follow requests. This was extremely strange because the most I had ever received in a single day was maybe 5 or 6. When I looked, I noticed that all of the men on the list appeared to be older, not just a little older, but noticeably older, as if they were in their 40s and 50s. I went through the list and declined. I couldn't understand why this was happening, and the following day I had 57 follow requests waiting, all from older men. For the next few days, every time I opened Instagram, I discovered dozens of follow requests from older men. Soon after, the same thing began to happen on Facebook, where I was inundated with friend requests daily. Unsure of what to do, I deleted the account. I made new accounts on all of my social media platforms a few months later, and since then, everything has been normal and nothing strange has happened. It's still the strangest experience, and I still don't know why. This story happened about 2 years ago, when I was 18 and in my senior year of high school. Like many other girls my age, I was really into Instagram, posting pictures a few times a month and typically receiving a good response. Many likes on them, and like many girls online, occasionally older creepy men would leave comments on my photos or send me messages, which I would ignore and delete. Then, one day in the fall of 2018, I posted a picture of myself and a friend at school, and an older man commented with heart emojis, saying things like, "You're so pretty." I didn't know him at all, and when he sent me a direct message, saying, "Hey, I'd really like to meet you. Are you interested?" I immediately deleted the message and blocked him after seeing that he had no followers and appeared to be over 50. This wasn't the first time this had happened, but a week later, I received a message from another man who also had no followers. He was using a different account, and his message asked why did he send me my exact address after blocking me, saying, "I know where you live. If you won't meet me, I can come to you." This was way beyond typical creepy behavior, and I was so terrified that I chose to wait until my dad got home to tell him. But by then, the account had been deleted. I tried to ignore it for the next few days, but the idea that this man knew where my life kept bothering me, so I finally started to think about it less. However, a week or so later, I woke up to discover a stack of photos on the floor of my bedroom, near the slightly open window. I picked them up and discovered that there were about 10 photos total, all of which were taken of me outside my window. I was appalled, so I took the pictures to show my parents right away, and we called the police. Ultimately, not much was done about it. Unfortunately, nothing more has happened in the 2 years that have passed. I'm left wondering if it was a horrible practical joke or something much darker, that I might never discover music. This happened to me last summer when I first started using Instagram. I assumed it would be for fun, hoping that people would enjoy my photos, but I never imagined, I didn't think many people would notice them, so I posted pictures of myself and my day. However, I quickly received a lot of likes and comments, and people from all over the world were complimenting my appearance and my outfit. It felt like I had my own fan base, which I really enjoyed. However, I noticed a strange new follower named Marker. I initially assumed he was just another admirer, or perhaps not a real person, because I knew the internet had a lot of fake accounts. But then things started to feel weird around that time, when I started to see a strange car driving around where I was. His profile picture was just a typical image of a dark forest, and he didn't share any photos, had no personal information, and no one followed him. However, he kept leaving simple comments on my pictures like beautiful and nice photo. I had a small apartment in an old building on the first floor, but it was slightly above ground. The building was only 3 stories tall, and when I saw the unknown car, I also started to hear noises outside my window late at night. I once looked out and saw a shadowy person moving. Normally, my neighborhood was very quiet. My window overlooked a closed-off section of our building that was off limits to the public, so it was really strange to see someone there, especially at this late hour. I had trouble falling asleep, so I started taking sleeping pills, which I later realized was a bad idea because they put me to sleep so soundly that I doubt I would wake up for anything, not even a loud alarm. It was really scary. What the following afternoon, I was browsing Instagram as usual when I came across that strange profile again, Marker Dark 45. I clicked on it without really understanding why, and the images that appeared made me shudder. In terror, all of the photos were taken around my apartment. Some showed the exterior of my building, while others showed locations close to my home, but the images of the interior of it had to be Marker Dark 45, the enigmatic person I had seen at night. I immediately blocked him and informed Instagram about his profile. Then I pulled my curtains shut so tightly that I almost tore them down. But that wasn't the end. It got even worse. In some of the pictures, I could even see myself sleeping in my bedroom, taken directly through my window. I decided to call the police after receiving messages from accounts I didn't know that said things like "Hey beautiful" or "Miss you." The officers listened and said they would investigate, but they also suggested that I might want to stay somewhere else for a while, so I left my apartment behind and went to live with my parents. I missed my place a lot. It was ideal for me, but I couldn't be there by myself after a few weeks. I was contacted by the police, who said that they had apprehended the man and somehow linked the eerie story to him. They said that it was now safe for me to return to my apartment, and I felt both relieved and excited to live independently again. I missed my independence, so I packed up and went back to my apartment, but as soon as I opened the door, something felt strange. At first, it was just a gut feeling, but then when I entered my bedroom, I was horrified to see that someone had written messages in black marker on my walls, including phrases like "Hey, beautiful." Strangely, Urs would comment on my posts, saying that someone had broken into my place while I was away. I didn't know how they got in, whether they picked the lock or somehow climbed through a window. It's been a while since then, but I still recall every detail. I moved out shortly after, and I haven't had any issues since. I continue to post pictures online, in spite of the fear I experienced. I suppose I can't give it up because I never imagined I'd be duped like this. I always considered myself to be intelligent and cautious, but I suppose emotions can make you disregard all the warning signs. It all started when I received a message from a pretty girl on Instagram. Her account was private, but based on the few pictures she posted, you could tell she was gorgeous and had a charming smile. I have a sizable Instagram following, so receiving messages from strangers isn't odd. I won't go into specifics about who I am, but let's say I'm a musician with a large online following. Began talking, and I was surprised by how laid back and flirtatious she was. She complimented me on my appearance and sense of humor, and she wanted to know about my interests and musical taste. After a few hours of conversation, We exchanged phone numbers, and she sent me some photos of herself, which made me excited about the prospect of meeting her in person. She also mentioned that she lived in a tall building in the middle of the city and asked me I was first apprehensive about inviting her over for a drink, but she persisted in saying that I could trust her, which is something that only someone trustworthy would say. I knew it might not be the best decision, but I said yes out of curiosity. I showered in my nicest shirt and took a cab to her place, feeling both anxious and excited. I wondered if she would be as she was as gorgeous and charming in person as she was online. When I arrived, I was astounded by how contemporary and opulent the building appeared. I took the elevator to the 20th floor, and as I got closer to her door, my hands were practically shaking. I knocked, and the door quickly opened. She was even more beautiful than her pictures, and I could smell her perfume. If she ushered me into her, she explained that she was a model and influencer, but I was hesitant because her Instagram didn't have many followers. Perhaps she was well known on another platform, but I had my doubts. The living room was beautifully decorated with candles, wine, and snacks. We sat down, she poured the wine, and we toasted. We told each other stories about our lives, our passions, and our dreams, but I ignored those thoughts later because I had to use the restroom. So I excused myself and went down the hallway, trying to remember where she had mentioned it was. After I washed my hands and used the restroom, I saw my reflection in the mirror. And that's when I heard footsteps in the living room, not just hers, but those of multiple people. And went back. When I got to the living room, I discovered 4 men obstructing my date's exit. They were all wearing black, from their clothes to their gloves and masks, and one of them had a gun in his hand. I told them to be quiet and obey our commands, and one of them answered in a voice that sounded ominous, and it became evident to me that I had fallen into a trap when they threatened to force me to unlock my phone and open my cryptocurrency wallet. As I previously stated, I am well known on social media and have discussed various cryptocurrency projects, so they must have deduced that I had valuable assets, and I was forced to comply. I was about to lose everything, so I logged into my account with trembling hands and a sweaty forehead. They gave me a digital address and told me to send all of my cryptocurrency there, which I did, feeling both sick to my stomach and stupid for falling into such a simple trap. As soon as the transaction was confirmed, one of them grabbed my phone and told me to leave, and I left feeling deceived and stupid. After walking aimlessly for what seemed like forever, I finally managed to stop a police car. I told the officer what had happened, and he drove me to the police station, where I shared everything. I was unfamiliar with the area and had no way to call for a taxi, the police, or anyone to help me. All I wanted was to hide away from everything. I can't even bring myself to mention the amount of money I lost that night. It was a significant loss. I could recall providing the precise address of the condo. A few days later, the police told me that the condo had been rented through Airbnb using a fraudulent account and a credit card that had been stolen. I was unable to fully understand their plan, but it appeared complex. This experience taught me a harsh lesson. When you're young, it's easy to believe that nothing can harm you and that you're safe from. I never got my money back, and although it's difficult to admit, I still haven't completely moved past this incident. I'm 16 years old, and my birthday was only a few days ago. It took an experience this horrible for me to realize that there are people out there willing to take advantage of you and harm you without hesitation. I spend a lot of time on Roblox playing games with my best friend. We go into adventures like Murder Mystery 2 and Arsenal, but when I'm by myself, I usually hang out and adopt me because I love collecting those adorable pets. The thing I'm going to share happened just a few minutes ago. I was relaxing in Adopt Me after my online classes, which are great because we finish early on Mondays. It was approximately 11:52 a.m. and it is currently 12:07 p.m. While playing, I came across a player whose name uncannily reminded me of someone I'd rather forget. They had some numbers attached to their name, so I dismissed it, assuming it was a common name. However, something felt strange, so I dismissed it again, speculating that perhaps they wanted to trade pets because I had a pet that was difficult to locate. So I halted my in-game vehicle to await that exchange request, but it was never fulfilled. So I chose to go to the campsite instead because my virtual pet seemed excited to visit. Everything was going well until the user said, "Hey, my name," while I was returning home in the game. At first, it didn't hit me, but then it really did. My real name isn't on my Roblox profile. I only have 3 friends there, and they all know me by nicknames related to whether it was in my writing or the Roblox games we play together. I tried to pretend I didn't notice the message by not responding, but even though other players started asking me my name, this person kept following me everywhere I went. Eventually, I had to quit the game, and as if that wasn't creepy enough, they tried to add me as a friend right away. Of course, I didn't accept and blocked them right away, but that was just the start of a string of disturbing incidents that have occurred since I last told my story. This story doesn't end here, though, because the next part is even more bizarre. Following that strange game incident, things became even stranger. This person, who I'll call the Shadow, learned about a man I've been corresponding with who lives far from where I am in California. He's the kindest person I know. So when I found out that the Shadow was spying on my online friends and followers, I took no chances and blocked anyone who did so. I somehow told a mutual friend about it, a friend who is also close to me, but has been yelled at by the Shadow for just talking to me. This friend told me everything about how the Shadow couldn't do much, because my new chap friend wasn't nearby and apparently the Shadow found him intimidating, could potentially connect him to my accounts, effectively blocking any avenue for him to spy on me. I made sure to inform my brother, who has been taking care of me, and all of my friends who were aware of this situation. I even cautioned the man I'm speaking to in case the Shadow tried to deceive him. Previously, the Shadow had attempted to persuade another friend of mine that we were dating, even going so far as to say that we intended to get married and start a family. Ridiculous on many levels, not the least of which is that I have no such intentions, especially with him. Fortunately, no one took the Shadow's words seriously outside of his own circle, who appeared to be living in their own delusions. I once overheard them discussing me in a way that made my skin crawl, so I told my friends D and B right away. They were furious and made sure the Shadow could never speak to me again. Even though we have moved past those, I've left out some details in my previous updates, mostly because I didn't have the whole picture. But after speaking with B, I learned more about a disturbing incident from my freshman year on Valentine's Day. I found a giant stuffed bear on my seat in math class. I assumed it was misplaced, so I mentioned it to the teacher, thinking someone had forgotten. Classes D and B still keep an eye out, updating me on any new schemes the Shadow or his friends concoct. The math teacher joked, "Looks like you've got a secret fan." We had a close relationship, almost like father and daughter, and frequently shared laughs. Curiosity got the better of us, and inside the bear we found a note that I can still remember every word of, because it sent shivers down my spine. However, his reaction was unexpected. He said that wasn't there in my previous class. I spent some of my lunch break talking with my math teacher about the disturbing note, and we decided to throw it away. Even though I kept the bear, I couldn't get rid of the eerie feeling during lunch. The note spine read, "Dear, my name, on this day of love, I wanted to give you something special. I love you. I love you." My friend told me how lovely the bear was when we met, and I told her the entire story, including the eerie note. For a number of reasons, including the fact that she finds solace in cuddling with something during panic attacks, the fact that I dislike extravagant gifts, and the fact that I already had a large collection of stuffed animals from my brother since I was a child. I chose to give her the bear. I don't regret giving the bear away because it has helped the child, who still has it. Later, I learned that the bear was from my stalker, and he told me about his actions, including his claims that we were dating, during a phone call in an Instagram class group chat that B&D watched that didn't participate in. Take part in my stalker's boast that we were secretly dating and that the bear was his. He even made up the story that I was angry with him for ending our relationship because I gave the bear away to my best friend Gigi, and I could only laugh at the ridiculousness before thinking about taking legal action. But we discovered that, because the stalker hadn't spoken to me in person since I switched classes, and because the harassment was only occurring online, it wasn't deemed sufficient for lawsuit. I'm telling my story in detail to highlight the value of speaking up. At first, I thought it wouldn't get worse, but it did, and it's still getting worse. If you're going through something similar, please tell someone. Silence may seem easier at first, but it only makes things worse. I'm in my mid-20s now, and looking back, I realize that I would handle things differently than when I was 18 years old. My first year of college was a huge deal, and I was excited to finally be on my own away from everything familiar. I was so ready to start this new chapter that I decided to take 2 weeks into the summer session. I realized that I would not be just another face among the new students in the fall, because I would know my way around and, more importantly, I would be able to leave my home life sooner. At the time, my thoughts were simple and mostly about boys. High school had been lonely without a boyfriend, and I was certain that college was where I would meet the one, just like in the movies. Was spending time with one of my roommates. There were 4 of us in total, and we were sharing pictures from Instagram of our friends and family. Tracy, my roommate, showed me a picture of herself with 2 guys, her boyfriend and his best friend, Sean. Sean was very attractive, and when I brought it up, Tracy claimed he was single and enrolled in a nearby tech college. A few days later, Tracy told me she's Sean, and I messaged for about a week before I felt comfortable enough to give him my phone number. At first, he was very sweet, sending me good morning texts and looking forward to our nightly FaceTime call. I was thrilled by the attention having him. I had told Sean that I thought he was attractive, and he was interested in following me on Instagram so we could chat. I was excited and trusted Tracy, so I agreed. I've never been in a relationship, so it felt like a dream that someone was interested in me, but soon his incessant messaging became too much. He would text non-stop and want to FaceTime several times a day, and if I didn't respond right away, he would barrage me with questions about whether I was okay and whether I was talking to other guys. He made it obvious that he would be upset if I was, and this was the start of a nightmare I didn't anticipate. However, fear gave me wings at that moment. My heart was pounding and my breath came out in sharp, short gasps, and I dared not turn around for fear of what I might see. I arrived at my dorm building, fumbling with my keys in a panic, and then I hurried inside, slamming the door behind me and leaning against it as I tried to catch my breath, my entire body trembling. The feeling of being watched hadn't gone away. It clung to me like a second skin, making me jittery and paranoid. The following day, I made the decision to take action because I couldn't bear to live in fear any longer, so I reported everything to campus security, giving them all the information about Sean. The night had become a heavy blanket, making every little sound echo in my ears. I didn't sleep much that night, jumping at every little noise. Despite their assurances, the fear persisted. Every shadow seemed to conceal a threat, and every unknown number on my phone made my heart skip a beat. Furthermore, they took my statement seriously and promised to increase patrols around the dorms, especially at night. They also advised me to always walk with someone at night and to keep my phone close at hand in case I needed help. I was trying to divert my attention from my studies one evening when I heard a knock on my door. At first, I thought it was Sean, but then I told myself he couldn't possibly know where I was. I hesitantly went to the door and asked who it was, and to my relief, it was just another student from my class who had come to discuss some notes. After all, it was the realization that my sense of safety had been shattered, and the world seemed darker and more dangerous. Even so, the event left me shaken and demonstrated how deeply my fear had altered me. As the days stretched into weeks, the tight hold of fear gradually relaxed, and the increased security presence and my friends' support allowed me to return to some semblance of normalcy. But the experience had left its mark. I was more watchful and conscious of my surroundings because I had learned the hard way. The story doesn't end here, but I'll stop here because what happened next is a story for another time. It's a continuation of a journey from innocence to awareness, from fear to resilience. And as I think back on those terrifying weeks, I realize that even though I lost a piece of myself to fear, I also gained my hands were shaking, but I managed to use my key card to get inside quickly. I turned around just in time to see a figure about 10 from the door standing still and staring directly at me even under the shadow of a hoodie without seeing a face. I somehow made it back to my dorm building feeling the chase right behind me. I didn't stay there frozen for long because I had a gut feeling it was Sean. I hurried to find the resident advisor, who was on duty that night, and I told him about the terrifying chase, tears streaming down my face. The Raw called the police right away, and I told them everything. However, they couldn't do much for me because I hadn't seen the person's face clearly and only suspected it was Sean. They said it might have been my fear playing tricks on me in the dark of the night. Feeling a little dismissed and still afraid, I called my friend to tell her about the horror of the night, and she never left town to make sure I wasn't alone when I had late classes. This sequence of events rocked me to my core, making me reevaluate my college experience, and I made the decision to leave feeling that I decided that college was no longer for me. So I returned home and pursued a different career path in cosmetology school, where I discovered my love for hairdressing. Since then, I haven't gone out on dates, because the fear of a recurrence of such a horrific event still haunts me, and I have become very cautious about who I let close to me and my personal information. Years have gone by, and I've moved states away, yet the fear persists. I find myself reluctant to go alone and constantly checking over my shoulder, even though I'm far from the scene of the horror. It seems like it could happen at any moment. This fear has become a part of my life and serves as a continual reminder of that night. I've learned to live with it, but it's a solitary form of vigilance that prevents me from completely opening up to new people or experiences may eventually make this fear go away, but for now it haunts me like a ghost of what was and what might have been. A few years ago, I had a falling out with a friend who enjoyed playing pranks on people online. Knowing this, I took precautions to secure all of my social media accounts, adding to step I didn't give it much thought until a few days ago, when I received a text from a number I didn't recognize, and it called me by my full first name. This startled me because my name is spelled differently where I'm from, so I assumed it might have been an old friend who had switched phones. The verification that would send codes to my phone if someone tried to log in or change my password seemed like a smart move, right? I thought this was strange and possibly a scam to hack my Cash App, so I asked again, "Who is this?" but didn't hear back. 5 minutes later, I received 3 calls and to spam voicemails from different numbers, and then I received a text telling me to, "You're 18. I want to send you some money." I took screenshots, had my boyfriend call the number from his phone, and blocked it in the hopes that it would stop the situation. About half an hour later, I received 5 calls from a different number and an even more terrifying text. "I'm a 40-year-old man, and I'm in love with you. I will keep you. I will keep you. I'll keep trying to get in touch with you until you reply." So I blocked the number right away and called my parents. 2 minutes later, he created a new number and texted me again, saying, "Wow, I just want to talk to you for 5 minutes, and I'll even pay you." But I told my boss that I was leaving, blocked him once more, and then the text stopped after work. I went to the police station, told them everything, and bought a baseball bat. I thought it might be a co-worker of mine who got fired for bothering people. So one of my tech-savvy friends changed his phone number and pretended to be me to get more information from him. It was a lengthy conversation, but essentially, the guy wanted to talk to me on the phone while he did something nasty. And he called me 26 times and received no response, so he eventually stopped. We assumed it was over, but the following morning, I received a text from a different number again, this time claiming to be one of my friend's fathers. I became alarmed because my parents and boyfriend were both at work, so my boyfriend sent his mother to come get me and stay in my apartment. She answered my phone when he called, saying only in a spooky, raspy voice, when she told him the police were involved. His story changed and he claimed he didn't know me, didn't live nearby, and meant no harm. He said he didn't know me, didn't live near me, and meant no harm. I was having a full-blown panic attack when he hung up. We called the police again, and they sent an officer to update my report. My friend was still texting the man while the cop was there. Bother me, because he was lonely. I may be mistaken, but I thought my phone number was set to private, but I had it there for two-step verification. I think he found me because I recently posted something on Facebook Marketplace. I have since changed my phone number and deleted that account, but nothing else has happened. I'm posting this as a warning to anyone who uses two-step verification, so please make sure you have the most recent. Here's some background. I live in a third world country, and our neighborhood is rough for the most part. This happened about 4 years ago, and I'm 21 now and no longer live in the neighborhood. Yesterday, when I visited my parents, I saw our old neighbor and recalled what happened. I'm not going to set it up with my new number because I don't want to risk giving it out online again. Even those who have recently been released from prison are generally kind. We have a lot of people with mental health issues, and one of them is called Happy. My mom and I call him Happy because his name means happy, and we joke, "Oh, are you happy?" Because he always smiles, that is, until someone irritates him, which happens at least 3 times a year. I lived there for 19 years, so he lives with his 2 brothers and is happy, but he's mentally ill. I believe he has schizophrenia, but I'm not sure which one it is. He simply doesn't act right. You can't talk to him about sports, the news, or anything else, and his sentences don't make sense. I should also mention that our nation doesn't take mental illnesses seriously. My dad used to give him money to buy cigarettes because he knew that the brother who worked as a taxi driver had to support his 2 children in a different city, and that the fruit vendor made very little money. Happy would help carry groceries, and Dad would give him some money. Unfortunately, there are only 3 mental health wards in the entire country, and there is no treatment for him. People just call him crazy. As a child, I knew Happy to be helpful and kind, so I always smiled at him, and he smiled back. However, when I turned 15, he changed. He continued to grin and smoked outside in various shady places all day. I woke up at 7 in the morning, one day when I was 16. Things got pretty terrifying. It was a hot day, and I was heading home from school when I noticed him outside smoking and fully awake. He either didn't sleep or woke up way too early, and he also traveled huge distances. He was smoking in his usual spot when he suddenly grabbed my arm as I passed him. His eyes were empty and his smile had vanished. He said, "You can't leave, you belong to me." I yanked myself away and sprinted home as quickly as I could. I told my mom what had happened, and she called my dad. My dad spoke to Happy's brothers, but they only stated that he was off his medication and that they would keep an eye on him. I was still afraid, so I avoided Happy as much as I could, but he always seemed to be observing me. We would see him in locations that took us roughly 30 minutes to get to by car, so you can only imagine how long it must have taken him to walk there. He appeared restless, but he mostly just stood and smoked. He was out early in the morning and late at night, and his behavior became really eerie. He always looked at me with an odd forced smile as I went by him, and occasionally he would walk backward to continue staring. I looked back a few times to make sure he did this each time, and he would also press his back against walls as if he were hiding. His entire behavior changed, and his anger and fits increased. He would yell absurd things and angrily walk toward his house now, to when I was 17 years old. I happened to be home alone one day because I had to study and didn't go out with my family. He probably knew I was alone because every time my family left, I saw him through the window, standing in his usual spot, staring as they drove off for lunch. As I mentioned, he always followed me with his eyes. Arrived, I went to buy some ingredients for cooking, and I noticed him standing next to his brother, who sells fruit at the neighborhood market. I went to buy some meat and vegetables, and the vegetables were near Happy, but the butcher was a minute's walk away. After I paid him and packed my bag, I looked up and noticed Happy staring at me. I didn't think much of it and started to walk home, but he was right behind me once more. Since our houses were next to each other, I didn't give it much thought. I passed his house and waited for his footsteps to stop, but they didn't, and he was still right behind me. I turned around and saw his eyes still on me with that eerie smile, but I didn't worry because I assumed he was just going to his usual spot to light a cigarette. I never felt in danger in my neighborhood, so I wasn't easily frightened, especially by Happy. Even when he was angry, I didn't think he was dangerous, so I didn't see any warning signs. I went through the main door from the street and into the spacious hall. I passed the door of an elderly woman and turned right to go up the stairs to my second-floor apartment when I heard someone enter the main door and enter the hall. Once more, I assumed it was one of the third-floor neighbors because of the quick footsteps, which led me to believe that someone was rushing. I turned to face the bottom of the stairs to see who it was and give them space, but to my surprise, I saw that it was none other than Happy. My heart began to race, so I said, "Happy." Instead of responding, he began running in my direction, taking 2 steps at a time. I attempted to climb more quickly, but he caught my foot, and I slipped, hurting my right arm and knee from the fall. He pulled me to the bottom of the stairs, which further aggravated my back pain. But with all the adrenaline in my system, I began kicking to get my ankle out of his hands and yelling for him to get off. I also yelled for help, hoping that afraid that he would follow me into the house. I kicked at him in the hopes that he would lose his balance and fall down the stairs, giving me time to get inside. I kicked and screamed for what seemed like an eternity, but it finally worked. The neighbors would hear and come to my aid with my free leg. I kicked his arm to get him to release it, then continued kicking and shaking the other leg free until I was free. After about 5 seconds, I heard the old woman's door downstairs open. She was so happy to hear the noise and fled when he passed her house. She saw him and yelled at him, but he ignored her. She called my name to see if I was all right, but I was unable to answer, so she stuck her head up from the bottom of the stairs and continued to call my name. All I could do was cry and feel the pain. She started calling for my mom because my elbow was bleeding, but I told her that no one was home, so she asked me to come to her house so she could help with my bleeding. I told her that I would do it myself, but she persisted, so I ignored her and slowly made my way upstairs to my house. After an hour or so, I calmed down a little and went to the old lady's house. I knocked, and she opened the door when I asked. I told her that Happy was just crazy, and that my dad shouldn't go to jail for someone who wasn't in their right mind. I persuaded her that Happy wasn't thinking straight, and that it wasn't that serious. She promised not to tell my family, and that was that for the next 2 years. Happy changed again. This time he in the first few months. I was afraid he might be waiting around a corner or something, but he simply didn't want to be seen by me. Even after I moved out and only occasionally visited, he still avoided me to this day, 4 years later, and I'm so glad you don't hurt any other girls in the future. He wouldn't even look me in the eyes if I was walking and he was approaching me. The neighborhood but my greatest wish is that my nation will provide better mental health care to those in need. Jocelyn Connor was born in Anaheim, California, on March 14, 1990, and grew up close to Lake Elena. She began modeling for local magazines at the age of 17, and at just 17, she achieved widespread fame. In addition to appearing on the cover of Low Rider magazine, Jocelyn was featured in a Valentine's Day special featuring world-renowned hip-hop artist Gerardo Ortiz, and in the music video for his song about Barca. Her fame also helped her launch her own swimwear line, and she used her 13 million follower Instagram to sell her goods. As one might anticipate from an influencer, there are numerous photos of herself in swimwear that document her travels throughout the United States and Latin America. She took a private jet and attended modeling events in New York and Los Angeles. Jocelyn was also well known for having a large posterior, earning her the moniker Chinese Kim Kardashian, but she was also intelligent. According to her LinkedIn profile, Jocelyn studied microbiology at San Diego State University. She was intelligent, attractive, and wealthy. People estimated that she earned over $100,000 from sponsorships and swimwear sales, but that wasn't enough for her. In December 2020, Jocelyn scheduled a Brazilian butt lift with a plastic surgeon in Colombia. This procedure involves injecting fat from various body parts into the buttocks to make them appear larger. It has become very popular in the United States, and between 2000 and 2015, the number of these surgeries increased significantly, from 1,356 to 4,567. However, injecting fat into the buttocks can be extremely dangerous if done incorrectly, as it can result in fat embolism. Jocelyn Connor's surgery was scheduled for early December, but news of her untimely death began to circulate around that time. Her family has not confirmed the cause of her death, but Instagram influencer Lyra Mercer tweeted on December 7th, "Oh my God, Jocelyn Connor died in Colombia while undergoing surgery. That's crazy." A 3-hour live stream of what is thought to be her funeral was broadcast on YouTube. The funeral was small and intimate due to the pandemic, but it was evident from the live stream that Jocelyn's family was devastated by her passing. She left behind 2 young children, and according to plastic surgery, the estimated death rate for Brazilian butt lifts is 1 in 3,000. Family members were seen paying their respects to the young woman, with a large picture of her next to the casket. Some people wonder why representatives for Jocelyn's brand have not confirmed the news, as one follower complained. Given that the brand belongs to her, you should make a statement. With over 12 million followers, it appears likely that Jocelyn's death was caused by complications from the surgery, making her one of the unlucky few. Since her company is making money off of the vanity that comes with the Instagram influencer culture, confirmation has only strengthened rumors that Jocelyn died from the surgery. Last year, an online news site reported an increase in black market butt lifts motivated by Snapchat dysmorphia, a condition that causes people to feel disconnected from their own bodies. It is alarming that such pressures can lead women to risk their lives in order to meet a certain beauty standard. It has been widely reported that beauty-based social media is extremely harmful to female mental health, placing unrealistic expectations on women, and that it also affects their physical health, with several young women dying as a result of risky surgeries in recent years. It's obvious that Jocelyn didn't have to die that much, but how many more young women will have to die before we learn to accept ourselves as we are rather than striving for an unachievable standard? And how much of the blame lies with us for allowing such a standard to exist in the first place? Even intelligent, successful people can be so greatly influenced by what they see online that they choose risky surgeries. The Peshmerga were Kurdish fighters who were different from Arabs, but still Muslims. They were attacked by ISIS, so they were at war with them. A friend of mine told me about their Instagram account, which featured combat videos and images of them with captured ISIS weapons ammunition, and vehicles. This was back when the fighting with ISIS began in Iraq and Syria. Additionally, they shared some bizarre content, so I followed the account and occasionally saw their posts on my feed. One day, I came across a photo of them with a captured ISIS fighter. He was bloody and looked awful, but the caption was in Kurdish. I used Google Translate to understand what it said. It wasn't perfect, but it was helpful because some words were slang or misspelled. Vote mercy kill and similar phrases were translated, and it was obvious that they wanted their followers to decide whether the prisoner should live or die. Most comments were simply yes, kill, do it, and similar statements, but a small percentage said no, citing things like you'd be no better than them, and we are not barbarians. I was shocked because I shared the post with a friend who showed me the account, and we spent hours discussing how messed up it was and whether the prisoner deserved to die given what his group was doing. ISIS was taking slaves and bringing back open slave markets with sobbing women and girls, and they were killing hundreds of people. They only gave them 2 or 3 hours to make a decision. While we were conversing, my friend sent me a new post with a shocked, appalled emoji, those yellow, but also somewhat blue emojis that showed the same prisoner whose picture had been posted just hours earlier, lying in the dirt with a blank expression on his face and a pool of blood spreading beneath him. In the end, our opinions didn't matter. As I mentioned earlier, I have no doubt that the man deserved what he received, but knowing that it was carried out in such a savage manner and put to a vote was terrifying. Even the so-called good guys could be just as ruthless and bloodthirsty as the monsters they fought, so we can't really judge either. That the posts were removed, and the account was banned shortly after. Fortunately, Instagram was unable to allow such a thing on its platform, but as soon as the administrators removed an account, another one would appear and post the same pictures and votes. How would you respond if your people were being killed or sold into slavery? We can all agree that, at our core, people are the same everywhere. We can all be kind, generous, and compassionate, but we all have the capacity to be cold, bloodthirsty, and monstrous. I think I've never looked at people the same way again after seeing execution votes like the first one posted repeatedly. Eventually, my friends persuaded me to make my Instagram profile public, claiming it would increase my following, likes, and business opportunities. I followed their advice and made the change, but I didn't see any new followers, so I forgot about it. I reasoned that perhaps I wasn't cut out to be an Instagram model, but everything changed when I decided to take some pictures on a beach trip. Ended up taking a few bikini pictures, which weren't too revealing, but did show some cleavage. I thought only my girlfriends would see them, so I put them on Instagram. But all of a sudden I received a lot of likes and comments from random people. I forgot my profile was still public, so I panicked and attempted to remove the post. But then I noticed it didn't take long for someone to send me a business proposal. It was for a drink advertisement, and after I signed an online contract, I was supposed to go to a specific photo shoot and take pictures with their product. I was thrilled because I knew I could make money from this newfound popularity. So I posted pictures like crazy and my profile grew faster every week. When I told my parents that I was going to earn a good amount of money from this job, they were thrilled for me as well. The photo shoot was in a larger, more well-known city than ours, but I assured them that it was in our city, so they wouldn't have to worry. When I got to the location, I saw a really attractive man in a suit who identified himself as an agent for the company and asked if I wanted to grab a drink and discuss the entire details of our deal. I was initially perplexed, but didn't give it much thought because I assumed this was how business was conducted. Yes, I accepted the drink because nothing tastes better than a free one, but after I finished about half of it, I started to feel really bad. My head was spinning, and I believe I passed out because I don't remember anything else. I woke up in what seemed to be was gagged and tied up, and even if I tried to scream for help, I couldn't see much because it was like a dark basement. When my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I noticed that 2 other girls were also tied up in the room with me. both of them unconscious, and one of them appeared nearly dead because she was so pale. I had never been so terrified in my life, and my mind finally realized what had happened to Mia had been abducted, and I felt completely helpless and could only stare at the basement door and wait for someone to enter. I did this for what seemed like hours, but no one arrived, and then I heard police sirens approaching. The kidnappers took my wallet and phone, and I immediately regretted not telling my parents the true location of my photo shoot. The police entered the house and eventually made their way to the basement, where they untied us all and took us to the hospital. Fortunately, I recovered physically and mainly mentally from this incident, but the pale girl wasn't so fortunate and passed away later. The officers told me they received an anonymous tip from someone who saw a man in a suit, putting it was the most terrifying day of my life, and I have never accepted any business proposal that I have had to complete in person since. I am 21 years old, but at the time I started writing this story, I was 16 years old. I also discovered that the man who pretended to be an agent was involved in human trafficking and had plans to smuggle us out of the country, to really develop on social media as a broadcaster in general. I enjoyed sharing my other selfies and fitness and progress photos. I had a devoted fan base and many people I didn't really know on social media, but I didn't mind because it was a requirement of my job. Fast forward 2 years, and my current boyfriend and I had recently broken up, but we're still on good terms. She texts me as if she's worried. A random guy, who I know is one of my regular followers, sent my ex a whole gallery of my photos, not just a few, but hundreds that I deleted years ago. These include selfies, videos, strange angles, and stories about my workouts. I was devastated by this guy on Instagram who keeps asking me to get naked. I was so shocked to see hundreds of pictures of me as a teenager in his camera that I had to confront the situation. I blocked him and tried to forget about it. A few days later, I told my followers about my followers, and some of my closest friends and Discord administrators sent me private messages, indicating that someone had gotten into my, as I mentioned earlier, I had to face the fact that I truly wanted to be more modest and at ease with myself. So it was a really difficult setback for me when he posted some dubious progress photos on Discord without any context. It was disgusting, but that wasn't the worst part. A few months later, I decided to Google my username and found that the same guy had posted my images on a number of sex sites and even 4chan forums, among other places. I was only 15 or 16 years old when these pictures were taken, so I was fortunate enough to have them taken down, but it's still unsettling to think that some people can be so obsessed with you. Please be careful what you post on social media, but what worries me the most is how many of these people are secretly involved that we are unaware of. I hope you read this through to the end and exercise caution the next time you use Instagram, because it's really frightening to consider. My name is Martin, and I would like to share my eerie Instagram horror story. I never imagined that protecting others could go so wrong. I almost died, and now you can see how fortunate I was to survive. Was still in high school. I lived in a small Pennsylvanian town, but a lot of kids from neighboring towns and rural areas came to our school. It was a good time, and I had lots of friends and attended a lot of exciting parties. I also had a girlfriend, and I was generally content with my life until I met Christopher. Christopher was a tall, well-built man with a nice head of hair, but he wore thick-rimmed glasses that made him look like we became friends right away. He had transferred from another school because his father had gotten a new job close to our town. On the day he arrived, I was sitting by myself at my desk in the back of the classroom because I liked my privacy. Cartoon characters frequently fell off his nose, and he would always try to put them back in place. I found this funny, and occasionally teachers reprimanded me for laughing at him. Seldom sat with others when he arrived. The teacher gave him the only desk that was available, which was next to mine. I greeted him and thought he was friendly right away. We spent our lunch break together and talked a lot, and it seemed like we had a lot in common. He showed me his collection of video games and told me he loved League of Legends, which I had played a lot of back then. After a while, I invited him to stay at my house for a sleepover, and on the day of the sleepover, we planned to get some drinks and snacks from the store and watch movies in my room. Since I had a large TV, it was the ideal place to chat, watch TV, and play games, so that's what we did. However, before we started a movie, we talked a lot about our classmates, and when the conversation veered to the subject of girls, I started to feel really uneasy about him. He said something like I remarked, "Maybe, I don't know. I like some of them because of their personality, they seem cool," to which he replied, "Bro, are you blind? They're ugly as I hate. I thought that all the females in our class tried so hard to look good with cosmetics, but without it, they would look like junk. Wait, what do you mean by that?" I asked, perplexed. "You should check this out." He pulled out his phone and said, "I made an Instagram page where I upload photos of those ugly girls. Guys from our school pay me for each photo. They even suggest which girl should be next. All I have to do is upload pictures of them in revealing or embarrassing situations, like I following them to the restroom or hiding in the girls' locker room to get the perfect shot without a bra. It's so exciting and I make so much money from it." But when he showed me the page, I felt immediately unsafe because there were a lot of lewd photos of girls I knew from high school. Some of the pictures were taken from above restrooms, which I knew was illegal. I couldn't believe this nice guy I had been friends with for a while turned out to be such a stalker. I never wanted those girls to find out about this page, which was very popular from what I could see. Many of the comments were from my school Instagram friends, most of which were filthy remarks from some nerdy guys who would never have the courage to approach these women. I was appalled and afraid. Christopher was grinning broadly and displaying no remorse. He was just laughing and getting worked up over it. I didn't know why, but I wanted him out of my house right away and considered telling the principal. But I chose to comply and act like it was funny, because he was much bigger than me, and we spent the rest of the day playing games and watching movies, but I was worried and kept my guard up. The following day, I went to school and told the principal everything. He immediately called the police and thanked me for my report, saying it was a serious crime and that Christopher would be suspended. I didn't see him at school. I didn't know what he would do if I told him what I truly thought. My parents were out of town that weekend, so I didn't know where to seek help. I guess that's what happened the following day, but I also noticed that some of the girls in my class weren't there. I later found out from a friend that the officers showed some students their pay to verify that the pictures were taken without their knowledge or consent, and I can only imagine how shocking and embarrassing that must have been for them. I also learned that some of those students suffered from severe trauma, refusing to go to school and crying. Almost immediately after the police got involved, the page was blocked by Instagram every day for weeks. After more investigation, Christopher was expelled from school. For my own safety, I blocked him on all social media sites and his phone number. I hadn't heard from him for at least 3 months until one Friday night when I was playing League of Legends in my room when I heard a loud noise outside my bedroom. I was alone at home again, and I began to panic. My parents had this large new house, so there was a greater chance that it would become a target for thieves. I decided it was best to leave the house to be safe, so I put on my shoes and pretended I had to go to the store. Window chills ran down my spine. It sounded like someone stepped on a tree branch and broke it. And baseball cap. I don't know why, but as soon as I stepped outside the house, I saw a figure in black hiding behind some bushes. I stared at the figure, and when it slowly stood up, I finally recognized it as Christopher, though I nearly didn't recognize him because he had a lot of his hair chopped off and appeared to have cut himself with the knife he was holding. Then he charged at me with the knife. I thought he knocked me over and stabbed me in the stomach while screaming, "You've left me no other choice than to kill you. You've destroyed my life." I had never felt such pain before, and my mind finally realized what was happening. I instinctively threw his body off me and onto the grass before getting up and running toward my neighbor's house. I was going to die at that moment, but I couldn't move and didn't understand what was happening. Fortunately, my neighbor had his front door unlocked, so I didn't even knock before entering his house. I slammed the door shut and locked it behind me, leaving Christopher sitting in the living room, stunned and confused, especially when he noticed blood coming from my stomach. I told him what had happened, and he called 911, requesting the police and an ambulance. I just remember feeling so lightheaded that I passed out, but I woke up a few minutes later to find myself surrounded by police and paramedics. Fortunately, Christopher was caught and sitting in a police car. I recovered from the stab wounds, but I still had a nasty scar on my stomach. I testified against him, and a few months later, I learned that he had been sentenced to 6 years in prison for attempted murder, just like many of the girls at my school. It serves as a reminder to always be cautious and to understand that you never truly know someone, even if you think they are your friend. I was very active on a small building server from the 8th to the 10th grade, and I still don't understand why he held me accountable for ruining his life when I was only attempting to protect the girls from our school. I joined a group of builders when I was around 15 or 17, and we talked on Skype every weekend 4 hours. We all quickly became close friends, and we trusted each other enough to follow each other on Instagram. I became particularly close to one of the builders, Peter, who was in my grade, and we had a lot of text exchanges. I had heard rumors that Peter might have a crush on me, but he denied it. Thought it was funny because it was online, so I dismissed it. Things were good for a while, but then I noticed that he was constantly telling little lies whenever I spoke to him, which really bothered me. I decided it was time to cut ties with him and stop communicating with him completely. A few months later, Peter unexpectedly texted me to say Peter's plan was to live alone and support himself while still in high school. I tried to remain calm, but I told him that his plan was crazy. I said that it was strangely convenient that he chose my random suburb of all places. Peter insisted that his plan would work out and that it was just a plan. I thought that he might be transferring to my high school. He said that he was doing this to get in-state tuition for college. Coincidentally, he was heading to my high school. I tried calling Peter's bluff, thinking he was joking, but after I cut him off, he said he had already purchased plane tickets and was coming to stay in my town to visit some nearby high schools. I became terrified and realized that Peter had an unhealthy and strange attachment to me. To my dismay, Peter wasn't bluffing, and he posted a Peter asked me to meet him at the airport, but I naturally said no. Later, I noticed on his Snapchat story that he was actually taking a tour of my high school, taking a ton of videos and pictures, probably in the hopes that I would see them. Fortunately, I was confined to my house with pneumonia, so I spent the next few days completely on edge, terrified that he would ring my doorbell at any moment. Fortunately, he didn't. I felt like I was going crazy because I thought my rejection of his meetup would be the end of it. But about 2 years later, after I had just committed to my dream college, I foolishly followed Peter on social media because I wanted some attention. He was clever enough to figure out where I lived, and he flew home without carrying out his plan. The most perplexing part is that none of my old group from the Minecraft server even thought he was doing anything creepy. Kind of warning if he was coming to my area again, and he did. I saw him posing in front of my college library with the caption, "Transferring here is definitely the move." A few months later, Peter discovered that I had a boyfriend, and for the first time in 2 years, he got in touch with me directly. He began asking odd questions like I shouldn't have responded, but for some reason I did. I blocked him and, terrified, stopped following him on social media. He hasn't attempted to get in touch with me since this incident a few years ago, when I had to move dorms unexpectedly during my sophomore year of college. Because this is significant later in the story, because I used to frequently go on Instagram Live because I'm a music minor and practicing in front of an audience helps me improve my piano skills. The housing office at my university was awful to me and a few other student workers, and as a result, I lost my job and had to move within a day. My parents drove 5 states to help me, and they made a big deal out of it, so I could have more time to move, displaying stories and lives on the Explore page, which resulted in a lot of views and comments from strangers. The majority of the comments were either hardy emojis from random people or requests for songs that I couldn't play due to my piano teacher's strict practice list. I enjoyed the lives until I received a comment from a man who knew the exact location of my university. I never wore any school attire during a few messages asking me out on a date. A quick glance at his profile revealed that he was at least 50 years old and worked as a labourer in the city close to my university. He asked me multiple times a day about my class buildings and whether I liked them. This made me a little nervous, so I stopped doing lives for a while and got busy with regular work, thinking everything was fine, the cafeteria and other personal questions. I became afraid and made the decision to block him. However, before I did so, I called him a pervert and a weirdo for showing such interest in me when I was much younger and for attempting to locate me at school. A few weeks later, after I had forgotten about his messages, I received a new message from him that said something like, "I waited for you in front of your old dorm 4 hours, but you never showed. Did you go home for the weekend?" When one of my close friends recently graduated from college and began working as a campus police officer, I decided to talk to her about what I could do. Unfortunately, there wasn't much I could do, but I definitely pulled back on my social media presence because the guy followed me from 2 more accounts. Please don't be so rude to me the next time, or else we won't have fun when we meet in person. Fortunately, since leaving after that spring semester, I haven't heard from that creepy old guy on Instagram. I sincerely hope I never hear from him again. My name is Lucy, and I'm a high school student who has lived with my parents and younger sister Mia since I was a child. I blocked all of his Instagram accounts with different usernames before he could message me. I've always admired Mia because she's the sweetest and friendliest girl I've ever seen. Everyone in our family loves her, even when I struggled with math. She received perfect scores on every test, and my parents frequently tell her that she will use all of her gifts to take the world by storm. However, I've always been perplexed by how she managed to get a boyfriend. Yes, my own sister was stealing my boyfriends, but it wasn't easy because Mia was 2 grades below me. Before I did, even when I dated someone and brought him home, he would lose interest in me after meeting Mia. It was like a magic spell. They would start talking to her and then ask me for her number. However, we attended the same school, so I had to introduce her to my friends every time, and they would ignore me when I tried to talk to her. I've always been in her shadow, whether I liked it or not, but I must admit that I adored her personality and smile. In her sophomore year, Mia decided to start an Instagram page because she always wanted to be a model and loved being in the spotlight. She soon received hundreds of followers. I was astonished by her success and wanted to start my own Instagram page, but my photos weren't as good as hers, and my page never got even 100 followers, despite my mixed feelings about my sister, with whom I enjoyed gossiping. She gained thousands of followers in a matter of weeks, and then numerous offers from companies to promote their beauty products. She was single at the time and didn't want a boyfriend. Instead, she wanted to concentrate on her studies and her Instagram business. However, one day, she told me that she received a message on Instagram from a guy named Hey Lucy. You won't believe what just happened. At first, I assumed that the attractive football player would be like all the other guys, send a pic, but I decided to give him a chance anyhow, and we ended up texting for more than 2 hours. He's so sweet, and we have so much in common that it feels like I've known him for years. I really want to meet him, which sounds fantastic. Mia, But you never know with people on the internet, he might be acting phony or even stalking. Oh, come on, Lucy, you're just being paranoid. I believe you've been watching too many scary movies. Lately, I mentioned that Mia seemed happier than ever despite spending all of her free time texting this new guy. It was as if she was developing a phone addiction. I knew that online relationships could be risky because you never know who might be on the other side of the screen. I also knew that my sister would disregard any warning signs because she was so trusting and naive. This back and forth texting continued for about 2 months, she told me. They hadn't met in person yet because he wanted to know her better. Mia was okay with this explanation at first, but a few days later, Mia came to me in tears. I had never seen her so upset in my life, and she was sobbing that she was barely able to speak. I assumed the Instagram guy was to blame right away, but when I asked her what had happened, she told me it was that the guy I told you about is truly very evil. Please help me. I'm at a loss for what to do. I sent him my nude photos. I apologize. I knew I shouldn't have, but he seemed so nice. What trap did you fall into? I asked him for a lot of money, and he threatened to post the photos online if I didn't give him what he wanted. She said I told her to just Mia followed my advice, and for a while everything was quiet. But the quiet couldn't last forever. The guy messaged Mia again demanding more money, this time saying he would demand money every month or he would post the pictures everywhere. She didn't want to tell our parents because she knew she would get into trouble. Fortunately, Mia had enough money from her business dealings to keep this secret. I told her to do as he asked and not tell anyone else because her secret could spread quickly. Over the next few months, her mental health clearly deteriorated as she was consumed by the stress of the guy posting those pictures. Mia had no choice but to comply because she had become so popular in our city that a scandal like this would ruin her image and her developing career. Emma's once happy self became a depressed, lonely girl who was barely recognizable anymore. She had minor cuts on her wrists, which I thought were from self-harm. But things got so bad that Emma had to see a psychiatrist and was prescribed antidepressants. Her grade began to suffer, and her Instagram also started to decline. I could hear her sobbing every night into her pillow, and she was rapidly losing weight. When she eventually told our parents about everything behind my back, everything changed. My mother sobbed as my father acted quickly and drove Emma to the police station to report it. She stopped smiling in her Instagram photos, which caused her followers to stop liking them. The first thing the police did was it took a few days to track down the device that had been messaging Emma for months. But when the police finally called with the startling news that the device had come from inside our own home, they asked to speak with my father alone. Later, I learned that the officer had suggested that Emma was sending the messages to herself, which was a sign of a serious mental illness. My mother attempted to speak with Emma. Emma denied this possibility, but one night I heard my parents discussing sending her to a mental health facility. Emma was extremely depressed and had nearly stopped attending school because she was so overwhelmed by her stress and anxiety that she was unable to function. When I heard my parents discussing this, I lost it and started crying in front of them, and they were perplexed as to why my mother had inquired about what had happened, and I admitted to them that I was the one responsible for everything. That's why the police found the device at our house, and they took my computer. I was so sick of living in her shadow that I felt like nobody gave a damn about me when she was around. I was always the bad apple in the family, and whenever I tried to succeed, Emma would steal the show. I wanted her to know how I always felt. I was the manipulator and took advantage of Emma, so it was easy to pretend to be the ideal man for her to fall in love with. I already knew exactly what she liked and what kind of personality she preferred, so it worked out perfectly. I just never expected it to go this far. I just wanted her to realize that sometimes the other person's perspective isn't always better. My parents were shocked by my admission and demanded that I leave the house right away. After using harsh language, they stopped talking to me, and it took my mother nearly a year to contact me and forgive me. My father hasn't said anything since, and I believe I deserve it. When my sister learned what had happened, she also stopped talking to me, and our relationship has never been the same. This story happened a few years ago, and since so many people use online dating, I thought I would share it. One summer when I was in high school, I was browsing Tinder in search of someone to hang out with. Fortunately, my sister was able to recover from it for the most part, but she has never been the same. I sincerely hope that one day I will win back her trust and that we can be sisters again. Matched with a guy who looked really good and seemed nice. He was a counselor at a nearby high school in the metro area, and we talked on the phone and texted for a while before deciding to have brunch the following weekend. We had brunch with bottomless mimosas, and he was funny and kind. I think we laughed a lot. He got a little tipsy and said he was going to a barbecue at his friend's house. After brunch, he asked if I wanted to go with him, and I was having a great time, so I said I had to walk my dog since I hadn't planned to be out for very long. I told him I would meet him back at the restaurant in about half an hour, and he said he really wanted to meet my dog. I gave it some thought, but my place was a complete mess, so I just told him no. I returned to the restaurant, and we took an Uber to his friend's house, where there were many people drinking and chatting. Everyone was very friendly, and the barbecue was taking place out back. We chatted with some of the people there, hung out, and drank. He started to get a little tipsy, so I told him I wanted a drink and went into the kitchen to get some space. After a few minutes, he entered the kitchen and attempted to kiss me. I smiled and shrugged, told him I had to go to the restroom, and asked if he could get me after using the restroom. I went right out the front door too, and met you outdoors in the backyard, blocks down, and made a right. So I quickly got an Uber home. He began phoning and texting me, but I blocked him. He also attempted to contact me on social media, but I blocked him there as well, and I essentially forgot about him at this point. Fast forward to 3 years, and as I read the local news on my phone while relaxing on the couch, I scrolled down a little, and then noticed, or I believe it's safe to assume, that he was arrested for assaulting women he met on Tinder after posting a picture of his face that I undoubtedly avoided. This began in the latter part of my 8th grade year, mostly because my friend had a boyfriend who was following her on. He would leave comments on all of her Instagram photos, complimenting her on her beauty, which wasn't particularly strange, but we discovered given that girl was only 13, and this man was clearly in his late 50s. It's a little unsettling. He also began contacting her. Nothing particularly spooky every day, mostly small talk at initially. He discovered my profile and began leaving comments, but I rarely share photos of myself online. This guy's account also mostly featured art, whereas the most of my posts were just doodles and photos of my dog. I didn't mind his initial criticism of my artwork, because it was actually rather good, but eventually he also began attempting to communicate with me and sending me messages. Since I am currently experiencing severe anxiety, and I wouldn't really reply with words unless he asked me a direct question, primarily about what I realized that this went on for a few weeks, but all you did was send a heart or a smiley face. I discovered that this guy may suddenly blow up since I had replied to a message he sent requesting my age, and I informed him that I was 13 before setting my phone aside because I had work to do. The dishes. I noticed that he had sent me about 10 messages on my phone asking me why I wasn't answering and letting me know that he was kidding. I was initially rather perplexed by what he may have sent it, which would have enraged me. He claimed that my companion and I appeared to be 18. I discovered that eerie, but I didn't want to confront him, so I assured him it was okay, and that the talk was just part of my chores. Went on, and I excused myself from messaging him for the day after he did something incredibly unsettling. He appreciated it when I shared a photo of my grandma's corgi dog on social media and wrote a note about how much I adore it. that picture, and a day or so later, he sent me a drawing of a corgi, which I thanked him for. I flatly refused when he asked for my address to send it to me, but he persisted in insisting that it was a present, and that he wanted me to have it. I had to clarify that I couldn't give out my family's rules, because address, after which he finally dropped it following a series of minor strange things, and after my buddy blocked him, he began to rant about it to me, telling me that she shouldn't be alarmed by him and said that he was merely attempting to be kind, adding that if she had any issues with anything he was saying, she have to simply inform him, and he carried on in that manner for the following few days before revealing that he was pursuing her backup account and was about to initiate communication with her there. I informed my friend right away, and she banned him. I eventually blocked him and ceased communicating with him on her backup as well.